Again, I really want to thank you for coming here. It's so really important. 9/11 was probably a turning point in many of our lives, and certainly in the life of our country. It hasn't been the same. New Jersey 911Aware was started to become a nonprofit organization, federally recognized 501c3, which we are. And our mission is to educate the public about the issues of 9/11 and other issues of social importance. It's also to help in the assistance of a new 9/11 investigation. We believe, along with architects and engineers, and with many millions of other people, that there was not a proper investigation. You might even say there was no investigation. Police protocols weren't followed. Fire protocols weren't followed. And it is a sham. So that means 14 years into it, we really haven't got the answers we deserve. And I think that most of us are really interested in truth and justice, or you wouldn't be here. So you guys, whether you realize it or not, are really the engine that if we ever to be and to get an objective, transparent, independent investigation, it begins with you people here. Now, New Jersey 911Aware is interesting, and so is the state of New Jersey. So if you're from New Jersey, you don't know how very interesting you are. Because if you do some research, you'll find out that New Jersey is known by historians as a crossroad of the American Revolution. George Washington slept in this town. That ain't no kidding. And we meet right next door here. This is 40 Livingston, 60 Livingston, the Henry Guest House in the 1760 building. Now I'm going to read you something that's pretty interesting. Because when we got the building next door, we needed a place to have our meetings. And we weren't sure where to have it, and we had different places, and finally we found the library. You could have meetings there. It was great. What we didn't know was this, and this is what I call synchronicity. When I went up to the building the first time, there was a plaque right in front of the building where we meet. And when you meet in there, you feel like you're in the 1760s. You feel like the founding fathers are right there, that energy. And what the plaque said, there was a cherry tree right in front of the building, says, planted in appreciation of the gift from the people of Tuscarora, Japan, given in memory of the victims of 9/11 and as an expression of the friendship between New Brunswick and Tuscarora. So right here, New Brunswick, 70 feet maybe up the road here, Livingston Avenue, the Henry Guest House, you walk up to it, and there's a plaque there dedicated to the victims of 9/11. Why do I say New Jersey is important? Besides being the crossroads of the American Revolution, it was the first state to sign the Bill of Rights. Now, the Bill of Rights are pretty essential to what really defines us as Americans, is our freedoms incorporated in the Bill of Rights. So, what did New Jersey have to do with 9/11? Well, 681 victims were from New Jersey in 17 of 21 counties, which means in Middlesex County it was 57 victims. You go up to Bergen County, I believe it was 124. Monmouth County, 123. Hudson County, 111. So would you think that New Jersey has a nexus if we had 681 victims in 17 of 21 counties? New Jersey, along with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, own the World Trade Center buildings. Flight 93 was taken out of Newark, New Jersey. The anthrax attacks were in Trenton, Princeton, Hamilton, and West Windsor, New Jersey. A terrorist cell was in Paterson, New Jersey. New Jersey is right in the mix. If there's to be a new 9/11 investigation, it didn't happen in New York City. Although that would have been nice, it would have happened there. And we support their efforts 100%. And certainly the federal government didn't do it. Well, how about New Jersey? So we've tried, this organization has tried to involve the prosecutors from all the counties. We've written to them. We send them Richard's explosive evidence experts speak out. We send them a lot of information. We went to the State Committee of Investigation, asked them to get involved. We wrote to the Attorney General, to the Governor, and they sent it to the U.S. Attorney. So there's been some action, but not enough action. So as we're talking here, we've got to do some grassroots organizing, put some pressure on the legislators, but also to wake people up. Here's some synchronicity, and I look at this. When we set up this building over here, we got the Henry Guest House next door, 1760 Colonial Building. And there was a plaque there dedicated to 9/11. Well, I got in the car today, and I want to read you something real quick, and then I want to tell you what the answer to it might be, is how to deal with this, because 9/11 is a symptom of something much greater. And there's so many problems. If we could get through 9/11, it addresses a myriad of problems that deal with our disenfranchised as human beings, let alone as citizens of the country. And it appears to be an elaborate and sophisticated design to sink the country, without a doubt, to ruin what is best in America, and they're doing a great job of it, all right, because most of us aren't educated yet about it. Now, this is something that I pulled up the other day, and of course, it might get you down a little bit, but I'm going to get you up. But first, I'm going to get you down. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We're not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power. Not wealth or luxury or long life or happiness. Only power, pure power. We are different from the oligarchies of the past in that we know what we are doing. All the others, even those who resembled ourselves, were cowards and hypocrites. The German Nazis and the Russian communists came very close to us in their methods, but they never had the time, and they just around the corner lay their paradise where human beings would be free and equal. We're not like that. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. Power is not a means, it's an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. Where do you think that comes from?
Dick Cheney.
Close. Close. Comes from 1984, George Orwell. Now, I got an answer to that. I got a response, and maybe we can get into it. Let's hear the response. All right, that's our answer to the power structure, the oligarchs. We're not going to take it. We're not going to take it. Now, I have the honor now to introduce one of the most important people in the world, certainly in the United States. Now, he doesn't like that when I say something about that, but maybe he doesn't realize his importance in carrying the torch as he's done, and where he's coming from and where he has. He's a historical character. He is. He is, to me, the most prolific expounder and presenter of 9/11 truth in the world. He's probably made more presentations documenting the evidence at Ground Zero, the high-rise destruction of those buildings, and knows more about it than anyone in the world. So, as I said, I'm not going to make a long introduction because the movie's going to introduce him, and Richard's going to talk for some of the time. And but I want to introduce and get a big round of applause for Richard Gage, who, AIA, is the founder of Architects and Engineers, and one of the most significant people at the present time in the history of the United States. Richard?
That was quite an introduction. Oh my God. Welcome everybody. I'm not quite the revolutionary that Dave is, and I'm guessing some of you fall into the category that I fall into. We just want to get the information out there on a scientific basis. We don't have a political agenda. Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I think Dave is excited about having been at this for so many years and seeing so little progress in the education of the American people that he's got some energy, and that's good. But I want to show you the information, and then you can make your own decision about how you fit into how your emotional response is. It may or may not be at the level of Dave's. But for those of you for whom that is natural for, I encourage you to hook up with Dave and link forces. For those of you who just want to share this information with your friends, with other architects, engineers, politicians, government officials, media officials, that's more in line with what we do. And we've got the materials, as you'll see, to do that with. I'm excited tonight to share with you the founder of Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, Eric Lawyer, who 6 years ago founded Firefighters for 9/11 Truth. And that website is Firefighters for 9/11 Truth and Unity.org. Eric has 200 firefighters for 9/11 Truth calling for a new investigation. And in this movie, which he and I filmed several years ago, but finally got it edited, now he's out before people. It's very exciting. We're taking on about 20 different myths commonly held by people, put out by the government, put out by NIST, and we also have the media promulgating myths, a lot of which are untrue, all of them actually. We're going to take them one by one. It's a pretty exciting film. First, I want to ask you a couple of questions, though. Some of us come here not understanding anything about what Dave or I are going to be talking about tonight, so we pretty much believe the official story. Some of us are unsure. We've heard a few things. Some of us came in here fired up like Dave. We already agree with the evidence that the 3 skyscrapers were, we'll talk about 2 skyscrapers right now, destroyed with controlled demolition. So let me ask you those 3 questions before we start, and then we'll know if we've overdone our introduction or not. How many of us pretty much believe the official story? Jet planes hit the towers, large explosion of jet fuel, gradual weakening of the structure, and the buildings fall all the way down to the ground due to that weakening. No reason to believe otherwise. This is what we've been told by our government. Pretty high? Raise your hand real high. I'll 1, 2, 3? No, I already talked to you. 3. And how many of us are? And how many of you 3 were somewhat intimidated by Dave's introduction tonight? Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Dave doesn't have to feel bad. How many of us are unsure? We've heard a few things. We're here to check out. What is this controversy all about? Unsure. Go like this, because I got to count you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16. And how many of us came in here already agreeing with the evidence for controlled demolition? Oh my God! Look around the room. How come you guys didn't bring your friends?
Try. Did.
Don't have any friends.
We don't have any friends.
All right, some of you did actually. All right, well, we're going to give you some tools, hopefully, to lose some more friends. No, to hopefully get those friends back and share with other people. There's a lot of different ways that we can be quite effective in getting this message out. And Dave's got one way, I got another. You'll find your own way. Everybody's different. How many architects do we have here today? Architects, one. That makes two, you and me. How many engineers? They always outnumber us. Watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how many normal people? Great. All right, we need you guys very, very much. Any firefighters today? Firefighters. Firefighters, 1. And awesome. Welcome. And let's ask any upfront questions that you might have before we begin the film. Yes?
There was a thesis by a female physics professor who said that the seismic data indicated that a weight equivalent to 20% of the towers fell, and 80% was pulverized into dust into the atmosphere. And by this she said, that's not right. You shouldn't have 80% of a building pulverized into dust and only 20% fall, which is what the seismic data indicated.
Interesting.
Is that one you're going to bring up?
No, but it's one that we should address after we see the film, so everybody has a frame of reference.
Where did 80% of the towers go? That was your thesis.
Oh, that's great. I think you're referring to Judy Wood.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to that. And by the way, how many people are familiar with the third tower that came down? Hands down. How many of you are not familiar with the third tower that came down on 9/11? They just didn't know. Very much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And great. So we're going to talk about the third tower today. Shall we begin?
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Gage, briefly tell us what your education and training.
Yes, I'm an architect, 28 years, USC School of Architecture, 1986, licensed in 88, and have been practicing for quite a while. You'll hear a detailed introduction actually in the film. Okay, let's get
I just have
started.
one question.
Did you have the lights? Yeah.
One question. Is there a similar effort going on in Oklahoma City for the Oklahoma City bombing?
There is a movie about the Oklahoma City bombing. It's called A Noble Lie. I believe it's on YouTube.
It is.
Very, very well done. And yes, there are serious questions about Oklahoma City bombing as well. All right, let's get started.
My name is Michelle Weiss-Little, sister of fallen hero, FDN1.
That's a good sign.
Spectacular!
I'm glad you liked it. In fact,
That NIST is the Warren Commission, and those films are the Zapruder films.
you see some parallels in history. Let me ask you a question first. We asked you 3 questions before. Let's just ask those questions again. How many of us agree with the official story about the destruction of the Twin Towers? How many of us are unsure? How many of us may now agree with the evidence for controlled demolition? First, the official story. I think we had 4 or 5 before. How many people agree with the official story that the towers were brought down by jet plane impacts and fires? Anybody? No? You might be unsure. How many of you are still unsure? 1 and 2. Thanks. How many of you think the towers came down by controlled demolition at this point? Okay, the rest of you. That's a significant shift. And thank you for your honesty. Really appreciate it. At this point, I want to encourage you to sign up for our monthly email newsletter if you'd like to get information on the successes we are having, and we will have, toward a real investigation and what new evidence there might be forthcoming. So we'll share this locally with New Jersey 911Aware, this list, so that you can be invited and you can invite your friends to films and events like this. And there's lots of different kinds of these events.
So my question, you kind of touched on it. You said that the maintenance crew in the elevator shafts were there 9 months. My question was, how long would it normally take if you were going to plant explosives? And I heard that thermite could be painted, so those columns could have been painted with thermite. How long would that take roughly from your theory?
Well, it would take dozens of operatives, months, to plan and engineer and place these explosives. The interesting thing is you did hear about the ACE elevator modernization, the largest modernization in history, which brought what?
Who
Neil Bush was in on it.
Who owns that company and the
Hold on.
employees? Are they
Let me
potentially
just-
operatives or military?
Let me just give the information. You guys are rowdy. Gosh. Ace Elevator came out of nowhere to get this contract. Virtually nowhere. And we have Otis Elevator, who put the elevators in the first place, who should have been given this contract. So we certainly want an investigation of not only Ace Elevator, but the security company who had the contract up until the date of 9/11 to ensure the security of these buildings. They also had, by the way, Securicom Stratesec, the security contract for the two airports that it had eventually the airliners take off from those airports. So they had some degree of control over these over the pieces of the puzzle. Your second question was about.
Oh, my second question was, yeah, being an engineer, obviously, if someone's going to put their name on this list as an engineer or an architect, there's a lot of questions about personal responsibility, potentially putting your job in jeopardy, your personal reputation. How did you see that yourself? And then how did you see that through other engineers and architects with wanting to be involved with the movement?
Well, we have been told by a number of architects and engineers, I want to sign your petition, but this is online, right? I don't want an employer knowing that I signed a petition calling for a new investigation. I don't want to be called a truther. I don't want to be called a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to have a potential job in jeopardy. So this happens a lot. People can lose contracts. There's pressure out there. It's not. I think we've got more petition signers, 2,350 right now, than we've lost. But I'm guessing we'd have a whole lot more if this weren't a factor.
Two-part question. Number one, did you hear anything that Larry Silverstein, the original builder, developer, and owner of 9/11, was facing asbestos lawsuits on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars in a couple of years just before this happened? Did you hear about that?
I didn't know about the lawsuits. I do know that Silverstein, who owned Building 7, built it in the 80s, and secured the rest of the World Trade Center buildings, the other 6, just 6 weeks prior to 9/11, from the New York and New Jersey Port Authority.
$5 billion, right? Wasn't that what he got?
They were requiring him to abate the asbestos per federal law. And this was some estimates are $5 billion to take the asbestos out of these buildings. And so he spends only $125 million of his money, secures a $3 billion value in property, which, by the way, was only, by some estimates, half occupied. So why would you invest all this money knowing that it's a $5 billion required abatement in a building that many people didn't want to be in? But he walks away with $5.68 billion in his pocket after the towers have their instant abatement on the morning of 9/11, placing all of New York City in grave danger of cancer and so forth, which takes 10 to 20 years to develop. We haven't seen the worst of what's coming from that disaster.
Second part, Jesse Ventura with his conspiracy show on True TV had a guy who's a former retired Air Force pilot said this was clearly a black ops false flag operation. But look at what came after this with the so-called Patriot Act. It essentially does away with 1/3 to 1/2 of the Bill of Rights. Would you agree or disagree with that statement? The Patriot Act does away with it.
The Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 made it possible for any of us to be arrested, held indefinitely without a right to a lawyer, a trial, a jury. We can be tortured and even assassinated, and that's all legal. They've made that case. And it's an absolute crime. So our civil liberties have been legislated away, the First and Fourth Amendment rights. I'll say that much.
My name is Alejandro. My question is how the needs can be challenged in the court to be prosecuted for fraud, criminal fraud, because their report is a fraud. So what's going on there? Is something going on? Can they be challenged in the court
Yeah.
to bring that record and say, okay, this is not sustainable. We had evidence. This is a lie. The head of the NIST need to be in prison or prosecuted. So what's the status of that?
Well, we do have a lawyer who's looked into some of these things. Dave, could you respond to some of these questions?
Yeah.
About the legal issues?
It's a great question. It's one of the ways to go about it. In fact, I was just talking today with somebody about the possibility. There are lawyers that talk about this question. There's actually one in here right now, Michael Diamond, who's familiar with it, the 9/11 issues. And that's quite a possibility. I think there's a number of things you want to do. One is you've got some information. Architects and engineers are so wonderful in the sense that they look at the evidence. They're not spinning it, it's scientific. That's why you're attracted to them. It's science. And after a while, it's common sense. So as more and more people see that, I think that the ground floor is ripening, the grassroots. But we want criminal investigations, never been done before, really. And that's what we say, what venue would we use? Where's the forum? What state? Where? Do we want to do it in Malaysia or Canada, which have done nice jobs? But this is the United States. If we want to save our country, we better start doing it ourselves. We've got to do it. And it looks like in New Jersey we could do it. So what New Jersey 911Aware is doing is we would like to do exactly that. But we would support anyone that wants to do an action, and it could be eventually, you said criminal fraud, certainly Shim Sundar and John Gross, those two guys from NIST. Boy, I'd love to see them at a deposition or doing cross-examination. They couldn't stand up to Richard Gage's truth. If you had an investigation and put all the facts on the table and you had your experts come and testify, you publicize it on television to the world, you would certainly see what Richard's presenting is certainly a semblance of truth compared to what they're saying. So as far as fraud, you're 100% right. I don't think we're there yet. But if there's enough gatherings like this and enough questioning like yourself, we'll be there shortly. As I said, that hat was worth, what was it, $80? $70. That's going to be worth a lot in 3 years, because maybe there will be. And somebody they'll have to give up eventually because it'll get too hot. Maybe it'll be Cheney, who knows what it'll be. I don't know. Architects and engineers doesn't speculate on that, and that's good. That's why they're good at that. They're looking at the evidence. It's up to other professions to get involved, whether it be attorney professions or law enforcement professions. Architects and engineers and the scientists have carried the ball this far. They kept the torch bright. Now it's the rest of us. We've got to start picking it up. That's why you're here. You take it back. You talk to your relatives, your friends, and say, hey, look at this video by architects and engineers. But you're right. There should be a criminal investigation. And hopefully the attorneys get involved, along with the architects and engineers, and start putting it together.
Well, tell them what you've done with the 21 DA.
Okay, what we did in New Jersey is what? I put together, I asked a guy who actually teaches lawyers and judges in the state. I said, listen, if you're going to make a complaint that's going to go somewhere, what do you do? And he says, go to the State Committee of Investigation, like the FBI, it's the SCI. So I started putting a complaint together. And what I did is I went on their website, and they have a little box. It's a little box, like, you know, it's like you write a couple words, and that's the point of the box. So instead what we did is we ended up with a 62-page complaint. And basically, it's not a complaint you would take into suing. It's a complaint that a citizen would make saying, hey, you didn't do the job. And what we did is we named suspects that should have been named, witnesses that should have been called, subpoenaed, documents that should have been subpoenaed, theories that should have been considered, and we footnoted it all. So the complaint was about 22, 24 pages, and the footnotes were about 40 pages. We send it to every prosecutor in the state, and we send it actually twice, with the name of all the victims in their city or their county. Remember, there's 17 to 21 counties. So we listed that every name, where the person lived, how old they were, and where they worked when they were killed. And we said, hey, these people live in your county. You've got some kind of connection. This is a homicide. And we showed them all the connections. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, beginning of the presentation, the World Trade Center complex owned by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, 681 victims, 17 to 21 counties, anthrax attacks in Trenton, Princeton, Hamilton, East Windsor. And you had the terrorist cell in Patterson. You had a flight taken out of Newark. We had all the connections. All right? So we sent that to them. We got words of response from 2 so far. And basically was that they weren't handling it. The State Committee of Investigation, we met with their agents. First agent we met he was really good. He says, I had some family member was killed there. They took him off the case, right? They put some other guy who was like cardboard, you know? It's hard to talk to him, he had no emotions, right? And then they sent it up to the big guy. Eventually they said it's not in our jurisdiction. So basically what I'm saying is that it's only a beginning. So if you go on the website, NJ911Aware.org, you can read that complaint for yourself, print it out. It got to be a lot better. I didn't know this much stuff back then. When we wrote it 2 or 3 years ago, I know a lot more, and being associated with architects and engineers. I mean, you know, so a complaint can be put together. That was a citizen complaint, but we could easily retool that into a real lawsuit and really go after them. We don't have like a citizen's grand jury in this state. We looked into that. Maybe that could be looked at that more. There's different avenues of approach. That's one of them. Again, thank you for that question. It's a great question. Thank you.
We also, yeah, hold on. We also have the citizens grand jury. In this country, theoretically, and by the Constitution, we have the ability to name our own 23 panel of jurists and give them the evidence and have them make a presentment or even an indictment to a DA.
Yeah, so my last question is, why building 7? Because I heard that there was like 100 people that died on that building from the explosion. Was it a federal building?
Building 7 had mostly large financial institutions, but it also had the IRS, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which lost thousands of files related to hundreds of cases it was actively pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron, WorldCom. It had the CIA, the IRS, the Department of Defense, very highly secure building. Unlikely that Al-Qaeda got in here to plant explosives, right? So we certainly want an investigation of the fires, which were very suspicious, on the backside of Building 7 from where the North Tower's debris, some of which did hit it. So we do need an investigation of that. We don't know why they took Building 7 down. We can suspect through reasonable speculation that it was intended to go down in the morning. In fact, it was announced by CNN at 10:45. Somebody said a 50-story building went down. A firefighter said this. CNN actually announced it. There was no other building that went down. Just 3 towers went down. So had it gone down at that time in the morning, we would not have the incredible videos. It would have been obscured by the massive dust cloud created when the Twin Towers went down. We also, I think you heard that these mysterious witnesses heard explosions, mysterious construction workers, and they actually look behind them, hear the explosions, look straight into the CNN camera and say, "Do you hear that? That building's coming down." This was in the early afternoon of 9/11. So there's a lot of people that knew it was coming down. We suspect that it was a dud. It didn't go off on time. So that it was then fixed, and they got it down in front of God and everybody at 5:20 in the afternoon, 20 minutes after the BBC announced its collapse. By the way, they were early on the job. They apologized for that grievous error, citing the confusing events of the day.
So when you get to the point when you're ready for an investigation, you need to have a program to say what's that investigation going to be and who's going to do it. Because the 9/11 Commission obviously was a whitewash.
Right, and we don't want another Warren Commission either.
So like in your mind, like what are you seeing as your goal as how would this be investigated? Your dream team, if you will, or your dream of how this would be investigated for all the work that you've done.
We certainly want an investigation that looks at all the evidence, much of which you've seen here tonight, that uses the scientific method to evaluate that evidence, that brings forth witnesses through subpoena power and offers them immunity to come forth, and takes their testimony under oath. This is what the kind of unbiased, impartial, unimpeachable investigation we're looking for. How can we get that? Who can we get that from? These are great questions. We do not know of a body that is uncorruptible at this point. We're doing it ourselves by putting forth the DVD, the evidence in front of the American people, getting it to the media, getting it to government officials. That's all we can do until you speak with everybody you know. I came here not to talk to you guys, but to everybody you know. How can I do that? Well, there's DVDs in the back that you can get and take home. 9/11 explosive evidence, experts speak out. We have 40 high-rise architects, structural engineers, metallurgists, chemists, physicists, controlled demolition experts, all laying out the evidence.
Quick second question. Is there still there was a gag order on the firefighters immediately after the event? And, you know, they were really the first and most trained witnesses that you could possibly ever wish for. Is that gag order still under effect as far as you know? Thank you.
I don't know about the gag orders on the firefighters. Can anybody speak to that with some personal experience or speaking with a firefighter? I do know that some of them are quite concerned about their pensions and speaking out. Sorry, man.
I was personally involved in honoring the fire chief of Jersey City, Captain Lee, who died as a first responder. So a lot of the firefighters have died that were right in the middle of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Gage, thank you very much for the presentation and sharing your professional knowledge with us and your courage to come out and speak. I really had a question first about Shanksville. That's what made my curiosity begin. In that, and I don't know how much work you did on that phenomenon, but the fact that there is absolutely nothing left of the plane but Todd Beamer's wristwatch is in perfect condition in a museum. Is that possible?
Well, I don't know about Todd Beamer's wristwatch, and the same kind of example is used with respect to Mohammed Atta's passport, which was conveniently found by the FBI. But there's a lot of questions at Shanksville. I mean, here's a plane whose wreckage was strewn over an 8-mile area, and yet they're saying it wasn't shot down. And the hole where they said it was, there's no plane in, or people, or luggage. So there's lots of questions about Shanksville.
My brother happened to die 2 days after 9/11 of a long-term disease. So I was given Ancestry.com for a gift a few years ago. And I was looking up my brother's death records, which kind of came around the time I was interested in Shanksville and looked up Todd Beamer's death records. And there was never a death claim of his Social Security death benefit ever filed. And he was an ordinary citizen, so that should not have been held back or redacted or anything like that. In fact, he lived in a township just next to my own. So I had that question, and so I purchased his book, Let's Roll. And it turns out that in the town that he was born, there was no record of a Todd Beamer that was born in the year that he was born. However, there was a Todd Beamer who died on 9/11, 1997. So there's a lot of confusion about who people are and who are the players and what's happening, because we want to give absolute honor to anyone who died in those planes. God bless Todd Beamer if he was one of those heroes. But we want to know what the truth is and where the records are of even the people who are involved in the story of 9/11. And if you wouldn't mind, the question was brought up about Oklahoma City and the similarities of that building going down and the concerns. At the time I was reading some reports from the Army Corps of Civil Engineers, or the Army Corps of Engineers, on their take on that way back in the 90s when it happened. What are the similarities between the two buildings coming down?
Well, there were multiple witnesses of explosions, of multiple explosions. And the official story says one explosion. The official story says Ryder truck full of fertilizer fuel bomb blew the building away. But so if this is the street, the Ryder truck is here, the Murrah building's here, half of its facade was blown across the truck, across the street, into the building across the street. So how does that happen? These are the kinds of questions that are raised in great detail in the DVD, A Noble Lie. And there's all kinds of questions about, what's his name? The patsy. McVeigh, Timothy McVeigh. And I haven't researched this in detail, so I'm not versed on these subjects. But those are among, and there were multiple bombs actually found by, I don't remember which agency, but then this all gets covered up. There's many people that have been killed who were witnesses. So we have real problems.
If you were like a citizen like me, who's not into all this technical stuff, what is the secondary thing that motivates you to persist for as long as you have in being a spokesperson? I mean, you're not doing this because you want to be a popular guy. That's my impression.
Right.
What motivates you and drives you to continue to do right?
What got me going is that I was lied to at a massive scale, and that Americans were fooled. We're living a lie. This is a huge, huge lie that we're living under. I couldn't go back to work as an architect and not do anything. I had to do something. I had to try to wake up the architecture profession, because guess what? 99% of them know nothing about the third worst structural failure in modern history. This is World Trade Center Building 7. It's incredible. Once they know about it, they know it's a controlled demolition. As soon as they see it coming down, then they have, well, you mean they lied to us about that? Let's look at the Twin Towers. Oh my God, they lied to us? Once people get this, like we talked about, the dominoes do start falling. And so I do not want to live in a society that is living a lie, where our freedoms our civil liberties have been taken from us through legislative acts and executive orders, where we're going, all they have to do is the next large false flag operation, and then they flip the switch and we're in a police state. So I don't want to live in a police state. I'd rather die speaking the truth than live in a police state. So that's what really motivates me.
Now, there's a lot of crazy fantasies and theories that people have. However, a recent one that I heard, and I'm not saying whether it's crazy or not, I'm just curious about it, based on the evidence, and if you have heard of it, sort of the low-grade nuclear theory, and does that conflict with the evidence as far as that you've come across?
Well, some people suggest that nuclear weapons were used to bring down the towers. The nuclear weapons that we know about produce extremely bright flashes, the brightness of the sun. And they produce extremely loud bangs that are just incredibly deafening. They produce a lot of but incredible amounts of radiation that would have killed everybody in Manhattan by now. So, and nuclear scientists who have looked at this have said this is not nuclear. What those who suggest this use is increased background levels of radiation. Who knows where those came from? Some people suggest that they are from the tritium guns that were the gun sights that light up on the weapons in the police department, which had an arsenal in Building 6. So that's our answer about that. Others have asked questions about Judy Wood, who has put forth a theory called a directed energy weapon. Well, today you saw overwhelming evidence for explosions. You saw overwhelming evidence for hot molten iron. You saw evidence for nanothermite. She denies all of these, and she provides no evidence for directed energy weapons. Just some unusual phenomena. So somebody who denies the most basic scientific forensic evidence that is out there and doesn't provide the backup evidence for her own theory, I just have reason to suspect. Okay? I'm not saying none of these other weapons were used. I'm saying that we have solid scientific evidence for what we do have, and we're taking that to the American people, the media, our government.
I want to address that.
Yeah.
I want to address what that's about. For someone who spends a lot of working hours during the day working on disseminating truth about 9/11 on Facebook, on Twitter, and among my friends and family, there are people who have split the movement into three pieces: the ones who believe it's thermite, and the ones who believe it's energy weapons, and the one who thinks it's nuclear, and they have us fighting with each other and arguing about what it is. And every single time, what I will say is, we don't know what happened, but we know what didn't happen, and it wasn't 19 Muslims with box cutters and 3 airplanes. And we have to all get together and agree that we know what it wasn't, so that we can stick together, and then we have a real large movement, instead of fighting amongst ourselves.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation. And I just have a quick question. The collapse of the World Trade Center 7 looks different to me than the collapse of the other two buildings, in that the other two buildings always seem to, it's like they're being pulverized from the top down, whereas the World Trade Center 7 looks like it's collapsing and the pulverization is taking place at the bottom. Is there some explanation for that?
Yeah, Building 7 appears to be a classic controlled demolition, very similar to all the other hundreds of controlled demolitions that we have, starting at the bottom, because that uses the massive weight of the building to help crush it. And it did come down at free fall acceleration, like many controlled demolitions. But it didn't have the bright flashes associated with high energy explosives like C4 and RDX. It didn't have the loud bangs, pop, 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 like you hear very pronounced in classic controlled demolitions. With the use of thermite, the intent, we believe, was to reduce the audio and the visual signature so that they're not obvious. These are very deceptive controlled demolitions. In the case of the Twin Towers, it's very explosive, hurling 4-ton structural steel sections in every direction laterally 600 feet away, no pile of floors. Very different. Why? I don't exactly know. I think it could have been possible for them to bring those down so that they looked more like a pancaking collapse. Maybe they didn't have access to the perimeter columns because of tenants in the buildings. They had to keep working in the core, in which we knew a 9-month elevator modernization was going on. Therefore, the explosives may have had to have been so profoundly powerful as to blow out not only the core, but the perimeter columns, and that they ended up with this explosive event.
So you believe there's two different collapse
inadvertently.
patterns? You believe there was two different collapse patterns?
I think the Twin Towers are very similar.
Yeah, I know. I mean, those two, and then there's a separate collapse pattern for the World Trade Center.
Building 7, yes, so two different collapse patterns.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They wanted to make it look like the planes did it, and the planes hit up at the top, so they brought that down from the
It's
top.
a magic show. So the planes and the large explosion of jet fuel is what we're supposed to focus on. Oh my God, all that jet fuel. They don't kind of show us the timing between the plane impacts and these explosions, and then when the building starts to come down, because there's about an hour or so difference in there. The jet fuel burned up in 10 minutes. Most of it burned up, 90% of it outside the building. It's the normal office fires that NIST faults as weakening the steel, which then brought the buildings down, which can't be true for a number of reasons. But what we do know is true is that explosion. We focus on the evidence for explosive demolition. We don't argue with structural engineers, architects, fire protection engineers about what fire can or can't do to a building, what jet fuel can or can't do to a building. It's irrelevant. We're looking at explosive demolition.
Well, real quick, I just want to get your opinion on what happened at the Pentagon. And,
yeah. Well,
and my other question is, how come they never scrambled jets?
Okay, let's take them one at a time, because I'll forget the second one, that's guaranteed.
With the Pentagon, there's no evidence.
Yeah, so we all in the 9/11 Truth Movement agree that we've been lied to about the Pentagon. That this is a massive deception as well. They had dozens of very high-res photos that would show exactly what did or didn't hit the Pentagon. And they're not releasing them. So that's a cover-up in and of itself. Let's say this is the Pentagon. And the plane that was said coming into the Pentagon, flown by who? Hani Hanjour, who failed Cessna flying school, and yet does a 270-degree corkscrew maneuver, more associated with the flight maneuver of a fighter jet, dropping 3,000 feet per minute, and hitting where? In Donald Rumsfeld's office? Up through the vulnerable roof? No. Giving it every opportunity to be shot down by the surface-to-air missiles which the Pentagon is outfitted with, but which were apparently turned off that day. And so where does it hit? Right in the civilian and the Naval Intelligence Department, which was looking for the $2.3 trillion that Donald Rumsfeld had admitted was missing from the Pentagon budget the night before 9/11. So we all want an investigation of what happened at the Pentagon. And there's a lot of argument within the 9/11 Truth Movement about what did or didn't hit it.
The second question was just, it's kind of incredible to me because I was working it that day and my beepers went off and jets didn't fly over New Brunswick until like an hour later, all over the place.
Yeah.
But, you know, they got these planes that are errant and they should have been on top of them in like 20 minutes.
Yes, there were 4 different drills going on the morning of 9/11, and they were designed, well, they certainly confused air traffic controllers. They didn't know what was real, what was exercise things. And they sent jets all different directions away from the central, vulnerable, eastern, sensitive corridor. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Fellow architect, so
Hey.
I was led to this by Building 7, which I didn't know about initially, and saw YouTube videos of it, and that led me backwards. And I'm like you, I'm just following the facts where they go in the evidence, not, you know, some of this gets off into the weeds with a lot of conspiracy stuff, which I don't doubt some of it, but it's less provable. But obviously, the facts of the building's coming down. So I have a couple quick questions, but one is thermite. Now, who manufactures it? Who uses it? I believe it's military, and then who has the authority to, you know, purchase it? Who makes it? You know, where does it come from? How is it used typically?
Well, normal thermite you can buy on eBay. It's
Really?
just rust and aluminum powder. And you put those two
So
together.
this isn't a controlled substance that you need a license or anything
Not
for?
normal thermite.
Right.
So you can put those two together, ignite them with I think it's 3,000 or 4,000 degree magnesium stick, and in the right percentage, 3/4 to 1/4, they produce 4,000 degree molten iron. It's pretty incredible. Nanothermite is what was found in the World Trade Center dust by the team of scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen. In the 4 independently collected samples, they find the same red-gray chips. And the question came up, was it painted on? I didn't answer that question. We believe that nanothermite in liquid form was painted because these chips are multi-layered. And they did, in fact, have a fire-proofing retrofit in each of the towers in the sections that were hit in each of the towers. And the north-south tower lower and the north tower higher. So those floors, about 10 or so floors in each case, were retrofitted, and so it's suggested or speculated that this may have been an application, a deceptive application of nanothermite. We don't have proof of that.
The 2 buildings, the reason they came down differently, and as you'll support, you know, this architect speak, but the number 7 building was a curtain wall building, so that's a steel frame with a curtain wall with stone on it, and that's just a steel frame, you know, as people may or may not know. The World Trade Center was, like you said, an exoskeleton, so the exterior wall is the structure. It's not, you don't hang the exterior wall on the structure, it is the structure, so you have to blow that out in order to collapse the floor, so that's why the explosions look different. So I'd explain it that way, honestly.
Thank you. That's a good point.
The planes is what leads us to all this, and I know you weren't talking about that and following that, but there is a, which you haven't mentioned, but there's pilots for 9/11 Truth out there too, and they have some good videos. And that goes into the science of the aeronautics behind the planes that hit the buildings, and a lot of that is very interesting science there too, and that follows stall speeds and speed of aircraft and stuff like that, and a lot of that just doesn't add up. So you can follow that, and the thing that really got me along with Building 7 was the fact that there's no debris fields in any of these crashes, and the NTSB, which wasn't mentioned here, but they normally investigate all aircraft, crashes, and in this case, they don't seem to be anywhere to be found as far as taking the aircraft pieces, which it can't be found at Shanksville. It's just a pile of dirt, so there's no debris field. And that was my question about the buildings. Was there any pieces of airplanes found, other than, like any debris from the planes found, since there were two of them crashed in there? Like, what was that evidence?
Yeah, there is evidence that planes hit the towers, and there's also evidence that they weren't the planes that were said to have hit the towers.
But there were evidence
So-
like engines, landing gear, pieces of wings.
There is stuff like
There is
that.
some of that, okay.
And we don't have time to go into detail about it, but I can assure you that I've personally spoken with 8 different people who have seen the planes hit the towers with their own eyes.
Mhm.
It has also been suggested that these were holograms, or that the planes never hit the towers,
Right.
or that they were the videos were faked.
Right,
There
right.
is some
I
evidence.
saw that kind of stuff, but yeah, I wouldn't believe it. And
There
then
is some evidence that some videos have been faked, but that doesn't mean planes didn't actually hit the towers.
Right. One last question. I know last night, I was going to try to make it, but you were at NJIT is where I went to college, but how was it received there? How was it?
We had 66 civil engineering students last night calling for a new investigation of Building 7. There were only 70 people. The 4 who didn't were professors, which is fascinating.
I can't.
Okay.
How can we bring this to a court?
Um,
You are the chief
Let's ask the
evidence.
attorney.
Well, I know it's a legal question. I know there's at
See, if
least
he
2
can be
attorneys.
brief. How many do you think Dave can be brief?
No.
Oh, Dave!
You've been all around the country.
Global hours.
You've been all around the country. You are the depository of all the evidence that you're the expert witness, and you know the other expert witnesses. How can we
It
bring
is a
this to
real
a
problem.
court?
There's been a number of cases that have been brought to court, and many of them have been thrown out. There have been fines slapped on people. We've gone to the Supreme Court almost with Ellen Mariani. We have had a problem with the corrupt judicial system in this country.
Bless you. And my question as I walk away is, I've seen you overseas in other countries because I'm really interested in your features. I've noticed in other countries it is really, really rampant. A lot of people are on board with this.
Yeah, that's good. I would like to have more people, of course. We need more progress. I thought you were going to offer me free transportation to Newark Airport.
Real quick, what was that website? PatriotsQuestion911.org?
PatriotsQuestion911.com.
Oh, .com, okay. Another one, there was some lady on the Gary Null show saying that when it comes to thermite, nanothermite, there's an Army Ordnance Lab in St. Louis, Kentucky, that are the world experts. They're considered within the armed forces the golden boys of the Army. They do the work. They got the best metallurgists, chemical engineers, explosive experts in the world. And then if it was thermite, it probably came from this Army Ordnance Lab in Kentucky. Have you heard anything about that?
No, but I've heard about the Golden Boys. That came up.
They're like elite black ops guys or something like
Right,
that?
yeah.
Okay, and the last one, did you also hear that major...
Relative to thermite.
Major Wall Street, London, and Tokyo financial firms were shorting airline stocks, travel company stocks the week before. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
A German company did an investigation.
Yeah. Well, the
No,
9/11.
it was a bunch. It was a German company that investigated a bunch of, not just German banks, that had shorted. Israeli companies had shorted. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yes, the 9/11 Commission looked into this, and they found that since Al Qaeda wasn't involved in the shorting of these airlines, that they didn't have to research it any further.
That was the official thing.
Yeah, it's in the 9/11 Commission report. Take a look at it. It goes right to this doorstep of the Deutsche Bank, Buzzy Krongard.
This is the last question tonight.
All right.
Yeah,
You're the lucky prize.
Do you have anything to add concerning the black boxes that was supposedly witnessed being collected, I believe, by Barry? What's his name? Jennings?
Well, no, he's not associated with the black boxes.
Okay, but I believe I saw something concerning the witnesses of seeing the black boxes.
Yes, it's in a book.
Especially considering the passport being found. You know what I mean?
The black boxes for both planes were found according to this gentleman who drove FBI agents around in his four-wheel drive around and they found him. They got close and they found him. He said he saw him. But this has been, denied. Okay, thanks everybody for coming.
Listen,
talk about
God bless everyone. Thank you for coming. If you can put in a little contribution for architects and engineers in the box as you go out, New Jersey 911 Aware. It's tax deductible, remember, so don't forget that at the income tax time. Thanks a lot. Richard, thank you very much for coming, okay? Thank you very much.